In this video, I'm going to briefly talk about types of goods and tragedy of commons. You might have heard this phrase before. We'll look at this in brief in this video. Okay, so let's start with the type of goods. So we are going to discuss 4 types of good in this video. The first type is excludable. So as name suggests, you can prevent other people from using the good if they don't pay for it. For example, apples, if this belongs to you, you can ask other people to pay for it, otherwise you won't allow them to use it. Jeans and some other goods. Okay, the other example is other type of good is non-excludable, which is opposite of excludable. So you can't prevent people from using the good if they don't pay for it. For example, national defense, you can't prevent people from enjoying the benefit of national defense even if they don't pay for it. Other example could be radio signal, oxygen in the air, open air. Okay, so these are few examples of non-excludable. The other type of good is rival good. So when one person uses a good, it reduces the ability of another person to use the same good. For example, coffee. So if you consume it, the other person will not be able to consume the same coffee. Cheeseburger. Okay, oxygen in the tiny room. So there is limited amount of oxygen in the room. The other type of good is non-rival, which is again opposite of rival. So for example, digital music. So when one person uses the digital music, it does not reduce the ability of another person to use the same digital music, because multiple people can copy the music, right? Then Wi-Fi, unless it reaches the maximum capacity, everyone can use the public Wi-Fi. Then oxygen gas in the open air. Okay, so these are few examples of non-rival goods. Now let me draw a table. Say excludable goods are here and non-excludable goods are here, and then we have rival goods and non-rival. So whenever the good is both rival and excludable, we call this private good. For example, jeans, hamburgers. Okay, and whenever the good is rival and non-excludable, we call this common resources. For example, fish in the ocean, wildlife, public roads. Okay, now whenever the good is non-rival and excludable, we call this club good or non-rival private goods. For example, cable TV, okay, Wi-Fi, digital music. Now the other type is whenever the good is non-rival and non-excludable, we call this public good. For example, national defense. Okay, so these are few types of good: private goods, common resources, club good, and public goods. So if you remember this, then it will be very helpful for you to solve few questions. Now let's move on to talk about tragedy of the commons. tragedy of the commons. So this is a tendency for any good which is unowned, okay, and non-excludable. So this is the tendency for any good which is unowned and non-excludable to be overused and under-maintained. Okay, so to be overused and under-maintained. So for example, fish in public waters. Fish in public waters. So since fish in public waters are not owned, it is difficult to prevent anyone from fishing. So when one person catches a fish, there are fewer fish available to everyone else. And each person has the incentive to fish before others, right? So this is one example. Now let's see a problem related to the tragedy of the commons, okay? So say a village has five residents, and each of whom has accumulated savings of $100. And there are two investment opportunities for each villager. So there are two options. First option is buy government bond for $100, and that pays 11% interest per year. Okay, so this is one option. The second option is buy a steer for $100 and send it to the common grassland and then sell it after 1 year. Okay, so sell it after 1 year. Now the question is, if each person decides individually how to invest, how many steers will be sent onto the common grassland? So let me write down the question. How many steers will be sent to common grassland if each person decides individually? Okay, so let me cook up some numbers. So here we have number of steers and price per steer. This is market price, and then gain per steer. So for when there is one steer, price is 120. When there is two steers, price is 116. Because when you send two steers on the grassland, each steer will get to eat less amount of grasses, right? So there will be maybe each steer will gain less weight compared to when there is one steer on the grassland. So that's why their price has reduced. Okay, and when there is three steers, the price is 114. Four steers, 112. 5, 110. Now let's calculate the gain per steer. So what is gain? Now you buy the steer at $100, so the gain is 20, 16, 14, 12, and 10, right? So now you can see that the gain per steer, when there are 4 steers on the grassland, that is 12, is higher than the gain from the bond, right? The gain from the bond is $11 per year, that 11%. Okay, so in this case you'll send 4 steers on the grassland. So the four of the villagers will send 1 steer. So in total they'll send 4 steers, and one person will buy the bond. So what is the total village income? Total village income. So $11 from the bond and $12 profit from 4 steers. So this is 59. Okay. So if each person decides individually how to invest, they will send 4 steers on the common grassland. All right. Now let's add one more question to this scenario. What is the socially optimal number of steers? What is the socially optimal number of steers? In other words, from society's perspective, how many steers should be sent onto the common grassland? So let me copy the table first so that I don't have to write down these numbers again. So copy, and I'm going to paste it here. Okay. Now let me erase this. Now we are going to calculate the profit from the total steers, not from the one steer. Okay, we are going to calculate the profit from total steers. So what is the profit when there is one steer? This is same as previously, $20. When there are 2 steers, this is 32. 16 times 2, right? Similarly, for when there are 3 steers, profit is 42, and then 48 and 50, right? Now whenever we calculate, we intend to calculate the optimal number, we think at the margin. You can recall the concept from the first video about the marginals. Whenever we do the allocation problem, we calculate the marginals, right? So in this case as well, we are going to calculate the marginal profit from each steer. So what is the marginal profit when there is one steer? 20. What is the profit when there is one more steer on the grassland? So you can simply subtract this. So this is 12, 32 times 32 minus 20, right? And then you can subtract this from here, from 32. This gives you 10. 48 times 42, this is 6, and 50 times 48, this is 2. So these are the marginal profit when there is one additional steer on the grassland. So now you can see that the profit, when there are 2 steers, drops from $12 to $10 when there are 3 steers, and $10 is lower than the $11 profit from investing in the bond, right? So the socially optimal number of steers is 2, right? So the 2 villagers will send 2 steers on the grassland, and the rest 3 people will buy the bond. So now what is village income, total village income? So the income is, you will buy 2 steers, right? And the profit from 2 steers is 32, and 3 people will buy 3 bonds. So 11 times 3, this is 65. So you can see, when you decide socially, when you decide from the society's perspective, the profit is higher, $65 compared to 59. Okay, so this is how you can make the decision about socially optimal allocation. Now let me give you more examples of the tragedy of commons. So the first example is harvesting timber on the public land. Harvesting timber on public land. So each tree cutter knows that a tree not harvested this year will be bigger and hence more valuable next year, right? But he also knows that if he doesn't cut the tree down this year, someone else will do it. So because of this tendency, because of this phenomenon, people tend to misuse the public resources. Okay, they tend to overdo it. The other example could be harvesting whales from ocean, okay, or sea. So each individual knows that harvesting an extra whale reduces the breeding population of whales and also the size of future whale populations. But he also knows that if he fails to harvest today, someone else will do it. All right. And other example could be dumping waste in public water. So nobody cares about the public water because no one has incentive to take the cost into account. All right. So these are few examples of tragedy of the commons. Now the question arises, how do you solve the problem of tragedy of the commons? What is the solution to this problem? So let me give you an example. Let's say you own chickens, some chickens, okay? So will you sell all chickens at once in the market? No, right? Because you may think about the future profit. So you'll decide to sell them slowly, one by one, so that you can keep a few chickens for future as well and allow them to breed. It will help you to make more profit. So what is the difference between this example and the previous examples? So the only difference is ownership. So the difference is ownership. In this example, in chickens example, you own chickens, right? You have the ownership. So you try to protect them, you sell them one by one so that you make extra profit. You have the incentive to do it, right? But in the previous example, you do not have any incentive to do it. You do not care about the public water. You do not care about the public land, public resources. You do not have any incentive to do it. That's why there is negative cost on society, negative externality. And whenever there is negative externality, people tend to overdo it. So the one way to solve this problem is to give ownership to people. Okay, we can clearly define property rights to some resources. Okay, property rights of some resources to people. So we can clearly define property rights. For example, we can give license to people who try to fish from ocean. We give them license and we can restrict them, we can limit them to the number of fishes that they can fish from the ocean per year. So this is how we can save the public resources. Okay, so this is one way of solving the problem of tragedy of commons. There is another way of solving this problem. So we can impose some tax on the people's income. So let's discuss the example. So this example is same as we discussed previously. There are 5 villagers and the market prices are also same. So number of steers, so 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and the price per steer, so this is 120, 116, 114, 112 and 110. Now let's calculate the gain per steer. So this is 20, 16, 14, 12 and then 10, right? Now suppose the tax is 25% on the profit. So this is earned profit. So what is the after tax profit? After tax profit. So 25% of 20 is 5. Then the profit is 15, right? Similarly, 25% of 16 is 4. Then the profit is 12. Okay. And similarly, we can calculate for the others: 10.5, 9, and 7.5. Okay. Now you can see that the after tax profit, $12, is higher than the profit from the bond. Profit from the bond is $11, 11%, right, per year. But when you choose 3 steers, the profit drops to 10.5. So the optimal number of steers would be 2, right? And you can see that this number is same as the socially optimal allocation. In the previous example, we saw that the socially optimal number is 2. Okay. So due to the tax, we have achieved the socially optimal allocation. Now let's look at the total income. Let's see whether we achieve the total income as well, the same as the total income obtained from the socially optimal allocation, whether this is same or not. Let's look at it. So what is the profit from 2 steers? So this is 2 times 12, and the other 3 people will buy bonds, so 3 times 11. Now what about the tax? We also need to include tax in the income or the welfare, because tax exchanges hands in the society, right? So government will get the tax, and government is the part of the society. So the welfare in the society includes tax as well. So we need to add this, and when you sum up this, you'll get 65, which is same as the profit generated from the socially optimal allocation. Okay. So this is how we can eliminate the problem of tragedy of the commons. All right. So this is all about the types of good and the tragedy of the commons. I'll see you in the next video with some other concepts of the microeconomics. Thank you so much for watching this video.